Hello. Hello, let me get your attention, please. My name is Eric Davis. I'm from Fandango. I am moderating the press conference for A Quiet Place. This is a film that I happened to see a couple of weeks ago at South by Southwest Film Festival, and I loved it, and the crowd just went ballistic for it. 100% currently at Rotten Tomatoes, which is rare for a horror thriller to be 100% at this point right now, and so that just goes to show you how great it is. I personally think it's the first great genre movie of 2018, and so I'm proud to be here moderating this press conference. So just a reminder, we're going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to throw it to you guys. If you do ask a question, hold the mic up to your face because this is being recorded. And so let me introduce the folks that made A Quiet Place. Beginning with the screenwriters, I'm going to bring in Bryan Woods and Scott Beck. And stars Noah Jupe, Millicent Simmons, Emily Blunt. The director, writer, and star, Mr. John Krasinski. And producers Andrew Form and Brad Fuller. Okay. So we're just going to do this press conference in silence, complete silence. John, I want to start out with you. This is a film unlike any you've ever directed, and really unlike any film you've ever starred in, too. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious what came first, your desire to make a gnarly little horror thriller monster movie, or did this script just kind of slide across your desk and you were like, yup?
Oh, no, 1,000%. It's those guys. They sent a script to Drew and Brad, and so much so, this is exactly what I didn't want to do. Put it that way. That's how far I went. I am not good with horror movies. I am a scaredy cat, and so Drew called me one day and said, would you ever be in a genre movie? And I said, I don't know, man, I'm a scaredy cat. I can't do horror movies. And he said, well, what if it was a really cool idea? I said, what's the idea? He said, it's a family that can't talk, and you have to figure out why. And I thought, damn you, that's a really good one-liner. And then I read their script, and I was immediately blown away because I had just had my Emily had our second daughter 3 weeks before reading the script. And so I was legitimately in that world of terror and thinking every single minute of every single day about protecting my daughter and keeping her safe, keeping her alive. And then the script comes about basically the exact same thing. And so that immediately connected me to the whole project, and I called them and said I wanted to do it.
You know, Brad and Andrew, look, I love John Krasinski, but when I think of a horror movie...
Thank you so much. That's all I needed to hear.
John isn't necessarily he's not necessarily the first person I would say, get John Krasinski to direct and star in this. And so I'm curious, what about him did you see that you said, you know what, let's go to him and see what he thinks?
Well, go ahead, Brian. No, you go. You go.
You guys are cute.
Thanks. Like John said, what he didn't say is we were working with him on Jack Ryan, the television show, and when we sent him the script, Brad and I read the script, we're like, God, John would be perfect to play Lee in the movie. So we sent it over to him, and what we didn't realize is he was going to call back and say, I'd like to play Lee, but I'd also like to do a little work on the script, and I'm going to direct the movie. And I said, okay, and then we Skyped with him for 45 minutes, I'd say, maybe even longer, and I still tell John, everything he was saying, I was writing down on my phone sheet on this piece of paper. And I am telling you, 1 minute into that Skype, I knew he was the director for the movie. And his vision, like within 60 seconds, was exactly the movie we wanted. The way he responded to the material, he has said over the last 18 months that we've been working on the movie with him, it was in his DNA, this movie. And you felt that from the first second. And he said it, and we hung up the phone. He doesn't know this side, but we looked at each other and said, well, we've got a filmmaker, we've got a movie, so let's go. And then John and I went off and did Jack Ryan, and,
And prepped the movie for a couple months.
Yeah. And then, here we are today, 18 months later.
Right on. Miss Emily Blunt, a question for you.
Yeah.
So you play a mom in this film. You are a mom in real life. You are starring opposite your real life husband.
Yeah.
In a role that, for any parent, myself included, there's a lot of anxiety in this role. And so I'm curious, this has to be one of the most personal movies that you've ever made.
Yeah, I would say that is the word that I've ended up gravitating towards to describe my experience on this film, because it was so intimate. It was very close to home. I normally sort of enjoy playing people who are very dissimilar to me, but actually this was a character that I understood so profoundly and so immediately, and I really admired her ability. There's a robot in here. That was like insane.
Someone just wanted to watch a trailer. Yeah. The new Deadpool trailer's out. It's very good. Everybody watch it.
So it was, yeah, I just admired the character, and I was also intimidated to take it on because really what she experiences on a much more magnified scale, obviously, is sort of what my deepest fears as a mother, as everyone who has children can attest to, it, that idea of not being able to protect your children from a rather brutal environment is really is something that keeps me up at night. So I would not do well in Quiet Place, personally.
No, there is a scene, we're actually debuting it today on Fandango, when you're in the bathtub, pregnant. And I thought just building up to that is so brilliant. Knowing that she has to give birth to this baby and how loud that experience is just one of my favorite parts of the movie. And you know, Bryan and Scott, before we come out to the crowd, I want to ask you, you know, the first thing I hear about when people talk about this movie is just how brilliant the concept is, and that we haven't seen a film like this. Of all the monsters and alien movies, we've never seen anything like this. So where did this idea come from? I want to hear like some really funny, true story.
Charlie Chaplin, honestly, which is the weirdest touchstone for this movie about aliens, where you have to stay completely quiet. No, it's like back in college, Bryan and I were both watching a lot of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. We're like, what if you took the concept of visual storytelling with no dialogue and you were able to appropriate that to a modern-day genre film? And so that was really the inception of the idea that kind of invigorated, you know, the original concept of Quiet Place.
We also always thought, like, it would be so magical to have a movie that's just pure storytelling, pure cinema that could travel the world, and there wouldn't be, like, a language barrier, right? Like, it would all be about emotion and visceral fear, and it wouldn't be so much about dialogue and what people are saying in a traditional sense. And if we could turn sound into the Jaws from a shark and just absolutely weaponized sound, we just thought that might be scary.
Awesome. And Melissa and Noah, you know, I feel like so much of the emotion of this film is through the two of you. And I'm curious to know what the experience was like. And Melissa, I'll start with you. How did you find this movie, and why did you want to make it?
Well, when I first read the script, I thought it was a very strange script, and it surprised me. I thought, wow, there's no movie like this. And when I heard that Emily Blunt and John Krasinski would star in it, I was very excited. I've seen them in their work, and I was so excited to be able to work with them. So I said yes right away. My mom always pressured me too. She said, you have to do it for me too.
And Noah, you know, was it difficult, or was it easy just kind of bonding with John and Emily as your parents in sort of this crazy environment?
A little difficult, you know. No, it was really good because they're just such lovely people, you know. And you know, just having two actors who work off amazingly off each other and who are amazing then, and then just to have them in the same scene as you is pretty crazy, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and this movie is one of them movies where you would just love to be in the world, and just being in the world is phenomenal, and I'm really glad that I'm a part of it.
Right on. All right, so let's come out to the crowd here. We have our microphones right here, right in the front row here.
Hi, it is just a great movie, so unexpected. For John and Emily, this is the first time you've worked together. Can both of you talk about that? Maybe we have different versions of how this came to happen. And is it the start of something big? Are you going to be the Liz and Dick of the 21st century?
We're going to play raging alcoholics next. I think that's the next step in our journey. You know. First, me?
You go first.
Okay. Well, I think we'd always been quite protective of each other's projects. You know, we've always been that sort of second-hand support system for each other during each other's roles, you know. And I think it was important to find something that could transcend the fact that we were a married couple. You know, I just never wanted that to be the story of the film that we worked on together. This was super exciting because the concept was so incredible, and we're sort of apart for a lot of the film too. And I think in this situation, it helped us enormously that we were a married couple, because audiences will buy us as that immediately. We do kind of have a secret language anyway, that as a married, we've been together almost 10 years, and but it was a bit daunting to take it on because we'd never worked together before, and so we had people kind of joking around, being like, "You're going to be divorced by the end," and actually, we were.
And we are.
And we are, you know.
Just a tidbit for that. Just, a couple quick headlines there, and we're done. Back to the question.
Yeah, but it was actually kind of amazing. Like, we really creatively aligned ourselves, and it was special, and I would do it again, for sure.
Well, for me, you know, when I was coming up with these ideas with these guys, and I always had Emily in mind for the movie, but I wanted her to somehow be able to arrive at that herself. And I mean that because I've seen firsthand the incredible specificity, the incredible dedication and taste level. I've never known anybody in this business to have a better taste level or be as smart with projects than her. So I knew that it would just feel very weird to me. The two ways I saw it going was if I said, "Would you do this movie?" and she said no, that would be a very awkward dinner. And then if she said, "Yes, I'll do it for you," that would have broken my heart, because I didn't want anything that she did to be for me. I wanted it always to be for her. And so when she read the script and she said, "You can't let anyone else play this role," I truly felt like she was proposing to me. I was like, "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" And she said yes. So it was really nice that we let each other kind of arrive at this alone and separately, because it made the whole experience together so much more powerful.
And were you always going to direct yourself?
Yes, I was, because I'm vain. No, it's weird. I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I never saw anything I directed as I have to be in it, which again sounds absolutely ridiculous since I've been in the 3 movies I've directed. But see, I told you it's ridiculous. But I think that for me on this one in particular, actually, out of any of the 3 that I was in, I had to be in this one because I was such a recent father and legitimately going through those things. I thought I might as well capitalize on the fact that this experience is pouring out of me, so my acting performance will be so much better because I'm actually living through the terror of being a new parent. I cheated, is what I'm saying, yeah.
Over here.
Hey John, how you doing? This is for you. You do a great job of building tension in this movie. I think everyone who saw it was on their, tippy toes the entire time. What really inspired you to shoot it the way you did? The shot selection and so on, everything is very well staged. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. The funny thing is, like I said, I was never a horror guy, so now I am. I've seen everything that's possible that one person could see. If you saw my iTunes account, people would say that I have a problem. But before that, the only movies I remember really connecting to and understanding in sort of a genre type would be Hitchcock's movies or the more classic scary movies like Jaws and Alien and things like that. So there was something about classic storytelling that I wanted to do with this. I wanted it to feel big. I wanted it to feel epic. I wanted it to feel almost like a Western in a way. There's something about this family on the farm that feels the setup is almost like a Western, and towards the end of the film, there's an actual showdown. So that was sort of the things that I was thinking. And then, our DP, who's incredible, she and I sat and watched all sorts of different classic feeling movies recently, like There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men, and all these things that can really handle silence. That was the other thing, is there's so much silence, or not silence, but there's so much quiet in movies like There Will Be Blood and No Country that it was really amazing to see how those incredible directors dealt with all that too. So to me, my goal was actually, if I can make you fall in love with this family, all the tension will feel scarier and all the scares will feel scarier. Whereas I think if I thought about it like a horror movie and how I can scare you, I would have missed the mark. I felt like that's just not how I was gonna do the best job that I could.
question for Bryan and Scott. Once John and Emily signed on to this, can you talk about the fine-tuning of the script? And John, can you talk about your input on the script?
Yeah, John did some amazing things in the revisions. The first thing that comes to mind is he really embraced the idea of sign language, and making that such, which I feel like adds an emotional layer to the movie that wasn't there before. And he also did a lot of condensing and collapsing, which I think made the story cleaner and stronger as well.
Yeah, I think like in the story there was always the character who was deaf, the daughter, and one of the great touches, like coming on board as a director, is that actually casting Millie was an incredible asset in terms of lending credibility to that character. And so that's one of those touches both in the script and I think once bringing it to the screen that really breathed new life into it that you can read on the page, but it doesn't feel as tangible until you really imbue the final film with kind of that extra touch. So.
And for me, again, like I said, their script had such an incredible idea, and all the major sort of set pieces like the birth and the tub, and I don't want to give it all away, but a lot of the ones that are scary and huge and fun were all their ideas. And so it was for me about how do I take those, incredibly powerful moments and drill down more of my own experience with the new parenting thing. So it was sort of drilling down the family, trying to make sure that every single storyline and every single moment came back to the family. So it wasn't just, the ideas that they came up with it or I came up with it. It was ideas of defending yourself all of a sudden became about defending a family and just keep coming back to that. And I think a lot of that happened in our rehearsals too. And I will say after talking to the cast and having each one of these, especially these kids too, Emily has no good ideas, but everybody had these ideas of how they saw the world. And so I gotta say that once we started rehearsing, it was this idea of how would you walk through this room? How would you walk across this bridge? How would you do these things and what's going through your head? And so there was a lot of fun collaboration all the way along.
Yeah, I'm curious about the creature design, which I think is pretty fantastic. And Brad and Andrew and John, I wonder if you can speak to sort of the inspiration behind it and where it came from.
Sure. One of the things, this is a weird thing to start with, but it's true, is one of my favorite pieces of advice my dad ever gave me is one of the more confident things you can say as a person is, I don't know. And so I had all these ideas for how I wanted this creature to look and how I wanted this creature to feel. And so I'd written all these things, and I actually got on the ground, and ILM videotaped me walking on the ground and things like that, which was amazing. But the key here was what I said earlier, which is ILM. These guys delivered ILM, but not only delivered ILM, brought ILM on board where they were so excited about this project that they felt like they were partners. And so the point I said about my dad is, when I first met Scott Farrar on the ILM team, I said, I have ideas, but I've also never done this before. So I'm not gonna dictate what we do. We gotta dance together. And what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And they were so incredibly gracious with their time and their ideas and hearkening back to all the movies they had done before. I mean, it's really weird when someone says, yeah, when we were doing that crazy kitchen scene in Jurassic Park, and you're like, oh my God, you did the raptor scene, oh my God. And they're like, yeah, so when we were doing that, and so the fact that those guys were on my movie is just, it's still to this day so mind-blowing, and truly it was one of the most fun I've ever had in my career.
Right up.
Hello. You do such a good job of coming across as really great parents in this. You're trying to instill normalcy where there really isn't any, and I really connected with that. And I was just wondering if you learned anything from this and that you're bringing into your own parenting lives, just whether it's instilling hope or, not yelling or...
Just sort of instill silence in our house, it's like the main thing. Yeah.
The kids don't get it yet. We're trying. They just don't get that concept.
I don't know if maybe, I think on a subconscious level this is the great part about doing the job that we do, that you experience life on a sort of, on different levels than you normally would. And it is about that sort of study of human emotions and deep empathy, So I don't know if there's necessarily anything I can pinpoint that we're bringing into our household now. But I can talk about it on the other way and sort of how it helped us as parents. We parent, obviously, the two children. And I think it was very helpful for us going into this experience with all of our lifetime of memories that we have with our own children, and the backstory of imagining what this family's life must have been like before the horror ensued, was sort of gut-wrenching to us. Like, imagine if this happened to our family, what would that be like? And I think that was really helpful, and actually there is a shot in the film where you see the grave, and there's a picture of me with our oldest daughter, who was a baby at the time, in a swimming pool. And it just makes me so sad, because I just think this was their life. This was this family's life before it all went to shit, literally. And so I think we just tried to bring as much of what we want for our children into this film. Although I have to say, I think I probably am more similar to Evelyn than John is to his character, because Lee is like an old school guy, and I'm going to let you talk about your own character, but John's a communicator. He can emotionally engage and connect, but there's a lot of men like Lee who have an impossibility of putting one foot in front of the other and can't move past something and are entrenched in feeling a certain way and can't recover, and all he wants is to keep these kids alive, and love is like secondary. And so we talked about it a lot, over a lot of whiskey, which we drank throughout this process. But we talked about the idea of surviving and thriving, and the mother figure and the father figure, and wanting to make those sort of iconic roles for the two of them.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The idea of surviving and thriving was something that I found one of the most fun dichotomies to play in this, because I think it's very real. I think the thing I love most about the movie and I connect to is that they're real. These characters are flawed. They aren't perfect. And I remember loving that about, all of the early Spielberg movies. The fact that Close Encounters and E.T. is a movie about divorce, and these kids revolt against their mom. And as a kid, you wanted to watch movies about kids that were better than you. And what you realize is you actually connect because they are like you. And so I think that for me, that idea of surviving and thriving, I know a lot of people who wake up on Monday and just want to get through to Friday. That's it. And then I know other people who wake up on Monday and say, today's going to be the best day I've ever had in my life. And I think that's the two ways that they were parenting. And also when you go through such a trauma, I also very much understand both sides. Some people just say, I want to make sure I get my kids to bed every night. That's it. And then she says, our kids can't just be survivalists. We have to give them an education, give them a world where they feel welcome, where they feel loved, because if they, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, if they don't feel that, then what have we done? We've done nothing but keep two kids alive. That's not our job. Our job is to really make them better.
I would like to ask the young actors, what was the most difficult thing that you faced on the set, if you could look back? And also, Millicent, how was the communication with co-stars and director was like on the set?
Speaking of the challenge on the set was how to feel depressed, because I don't feel depressed. I've never felt it. That was a difficult challenge. And on set, the four of us would sit, we'd get together in the trailer and go through the script and talk about it, about what the characters would feel, our relationships with each other, how our relationships singularly to mom to me, dad to me, and brother to me. And, and when things got really dark and we got kind of depressed, John would come over and talk to me a lot. He would talk to me about relationships, and if this were actually happening in real life, what would your feelings be? So John and Emily both helped me so much with that. Oh, what was the other question? I forgot your second part of the question.
Oh, communicating with
Communicating. Oh, yes. Oh, thanks. So as far as communicating on set, we had a deaf ASL advisor and a mentor who taught sign language, and everyone learned to sign. And we communicated easily, with an interpreter and without an interpreter. And Lynette, who is here, is the interpreter. Noah also learned a lot of sign language. even before we met, he started learning in preparation for the film, and so we fooled around quite a bit, I have to say. And now we're not friends any longer, as you can see.
I've learnt most of the swear words in sign language.
I didn't teach him, and don't say that. No, I'll get in trouble.
No, you can talk about the corn. That was the one day I felt very bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. That was a tough day. But it was very fun at the same time. Like, when you look back at it, it's just like a really cool experience. But at one point, I remember I was running through the corn, and obviously everyone smelled of bug spray because there were ticks everywhere and some sort of random bug hiding around the corner. But I was running through the corn, and at one point I got hit by a cornstalk. And I think you've got like a take or something where I'm just really scared and then suddenly I get whacked in the face by something. But yeah, it was a crazy and kind of hard, but when you got to the top, it felt like you've climbed a mountain, I guess. But that was probably the hardest day, I guess.
We put them through hell.
Yeah.
Poor kids.
We put you through hell, though.
When did you know this was going to be a masterpiece? Was it during the process?
That is so nice.
Was it during the
And
process?
as someone who grew up Catholic, I never can consider this a masterpiece. So you say it, that makes me feel really good.
Was it during the process or after everything was over and you looked at it and said, wow, I hit the mark?
You know what the weirdest thing was is I can be honest and say that, probably 18 hours before South by Southwest, we were still working on the sound mix, and we even made last-minute picture changes. If this were a painting that we presented to the world, the paint would be dripping right over the frame, and I'd be rubbing it with my finger like, sorry. And so I think that there was sheer terror in me, but it was also a great gift to be so close to finishing and presenting, because you don't have time to overthink, and you don't have time to overanalyze, and the fear of it sort of made you make decisions purely in your gut. And so there wasn't time for, deciding by committee. And so to your point, I think that, first of all, thank you for saying anything that nice. That's amazing. And I'll try to take it in. But the other side of it was truly, I remember Rob Marshall actually told us that he had a story where another director said, wouldn't it be great if we could see our movies? Meaning you never really get to see your movies as a director. Nora Ephron said that, that's right. And I thought that was really interesting, and I really understood that, because you see where all the bodies are buried, so to speak, and in this movie, actually, you do know where the bodies are buried. But for me, it was this idea of the South by Southwest audience gave me a gift that I'd never thought I'd ever get, which is they truly allowed me to see the movie for the first time. I had an absolute blast. So when did I know it was a masterpiece? I don't even know if I can process that, but when did I know it was a really fun movie? When the night before we had the screening, Emily said, what would you want? If you could have one thing, what would you want in this movie, one part of the movie? What would be a cool thing to happen? I said, if at the end they cheered, that would be cool. And when they stood up and clapped and everybody went nuts, I think I passed out, because I don't remember any. It was one of the greatest moments of my career. So it was that's when I knew we had something that actually might be special.
Yes, in the back.
I loved it. Can't wait to see it again.
Good.
I want to know how you balance the silence and tension on set with keeping that realness, with at the same time maintaining your own sanity, because it's such an intense environment to be in.
Yeah.
I got to say, I credit them so much. These other actors were so phenomenal, because one of the things we found out really early on, and it sounds ridiculous, but I totally understood it, you always try to be quiet on sets, but because the crew thought that this was a silent movie, I think they thought, well, they'll do it all in post, so we can talk all we want. They'll just pull out the sound. And it was actually us convincing them and all of us that we actually have to be more quiet than possible and than you've ever been before, so that you can hear every little squeak and wind chime, or no wind chimes, but wind. Wind chimes, you'd be dead, is what it is. But really, the intensity of it, I think that not speaking, if I'm honest, was my biggest fear, that how would we keep the pacing and the tension like a normal movie? And it was day 1 or 2 where I started seeing, especially these kids, Emily's fine, but especially these kids emoting with such power and such emotion that you could feel in the room that something special was happening. So I would say the tension and the feeling on set was all them. Everybody was creating this magical moment, and I was just lucky enough to capture it on film. But then I also credit them with, it's very hard to do movies like this. A lot of people have a process where they need to stay there the entire run of the movie, and I was lucky enough to have 3 people that as soon as you called cut, they were making jokes, hugging each other, asking what was at craft service. So it was, it was this thing of really being able to tap into it with these 3 spectacular actors and then jump right back out. I think really helped the film in a huge way, because we got to really give it all we had in the moment and not have to be weighted down the whole time.
And I actually got quite scared at the thought of like being quiet, but it actually was more safe in a way, because I don't know, your voice, when you speak in movies, it kind of hides your emotions in a way, and the way that you just didn't speak at all, and it was all in your eyes, and everything you were thinking was shown because you weren't talking. It actually felt much easier to kind of, get your emotions out and act off all the other people. So yeah, I thought it was easier than I thought.
Yeah.
I told you they're not normal kids.
Amazing.
Hi, wonderful movie, by the way. Can you talk a little bit about, through the rehearsal process, was there anything that changed that was initially on the script? And also, can you explain about the inspiration of the design of the aliens and how they sound? Because it's different than, say, any other alien movie or monster movie.
First question was rehearsal process.
What changed?
Yeah, so what changed? A lot of stuff changed. I think that really how I saw the movie, I was lucky enough to, with this movie, it's so tightly wound that there wasn't a lot of, I don't think there was any scene that we cut. I don't think we cut any main scene, which I've never experienced before. And it was that thing of, if it worked on the page, it had to work when we shot it, and it would be in the editing room, which I've never had to marry myself to. But what did change is within those scenes, pushing the limits of what could be done. And I think that, for instance, my relationship with Millie in the movie, I knew that I wanted a tension with the father, and I wanted this misunderstanding, I wanted this guilt, I wanted these big ideas, but I never knew that I could get so specific and so beautifully articulated until I met Millie. There was an idea of, the first thing I said to her was how beautiful she is and how wonderful this experience is. I just need you to know that every time I look at you with a weird way, it's just the actor, it's never me. But it's important because I didn't want her to think that even that I was doing some preparation of planning on being a tough dad on her, and I just said that your beauty and the idea of what you do is gonna change. I mean, people in the world aren't ready for how good you are and how honest you are. So now tell me how you would feel about having this relationship with a father that broke your heart. And she had such incredible ideas and such thoughts, and she was so smart. I learned so much from her. And then, to be really honest, again, not to give away the movie, but at the end, I will say what I signed to her at the end of the movie was because of her. I saw her sign it to her mom, and I've never seen anything more beautiful, because we had talked about I love you, but I'd never seen how you sign always. And when she said, well, you can also say I will always love you, and I said, okay, I need 5 minutes. And I went and cried and came back and was like, we have to put that in the movie. So that was all Millie there. And that's how it was for all the actors, too.
Hello. Yes. Hi, Juan Carlos Garcia from Mexico. I would like to know for the cast if working barefoot made a difference, or is it
the kids
the
can
same?
talk about that.
Oh my God, the feet. Oh no, don't even mention the feet.
So we did have some fake feet that they made for us.
We call them Hobbit feet.
Hobbit feet, that they made us these prosthetic feet for the wide shots. I never put mine on because I was so freaked out by them. And I think, did you wear yours once?
Yeah, me and John have some stories of getting like thorns stuck up there. But basically it took about 25 people to pull them on.
Because they went up to your knee.
Yeah, because they went up to like
They were more like fake legs.
But then they felt like you were walking in some kind of like
mush
the whole time. So it was very weird and a bit strange.
Didn't you try to run in them and you twisted your ankle running them? Because
Yeah,
you're like
so
landing on
basically-
mush every time. You're like, hey.
Yeah, because the feet go like that underneath you. And then John's like walking out, his feet look like they've broken.
You had to fill the feet with KY jelly before you put them on. That's the truth. And so when you were running, there's a lot of slipping and sliding. So we were sponsored by KY jelly. That's sort of those feet were.
I mean, they did try and sweep the floors as much as possible, but our feet looked disgusting every night. I mean, we would go home and just scrub our feet.
I'd have to spend like 5 minutes in the shower just going like that on my feet.
Yeah.
To even get like a little bit off.
But they were also very brave, so once the feet didn't quite work out the way I expected, to ask children to run through cornfields without any protection is something that I wasn't expecting to do, and I think that they saw where we were in the process, and they saw what happens if we push this to another day. We just didn't have the time or the budget, and I will say this was completely and totally up to them. I would never put them in a situation that they didn't want to be in, and these two kids were just saying, no, I'll do it again. It's fine. I know I'll run through a cornfield, or I'll, walk in the water, or things like this that I owe them a whole lot. That's also to prevent me from any lawsuits. That last comment.
Okay, we have time for one last question in the back, sir.
I guess this might be for everyone, but John, you mentioned a little bit ago growing up Catholic. I actually found the dinner scene where you guys kind of do family grace in silence pretty striking. And I guess for each of you, what role does faith play in this movie for everyone?
Well, for me, that's one of my favorite scenes for exactly what you just said. So my favorite thing in watching the scene is we all knew that scene was coming, but when I watched it the first time in the editing room, I was struck by not knowing who started it or who is asking to have prayer every night. And then you realize, I remember in the movie Signs, that idea of someone who had faith and giving faith up, and what does it take to give up your faith? Or are you stronger when you're confronted by the worst thing ever and you still remain faithful? Those are conversations that I'm so inspired by. And so in this case, dealing with such a trauma and dealing with such a loss, I was very moved and excited that we got to have faith play a part in their life. The idea that they are moving on, that this wouldn't break their faith, but I also still loved thinking about individually who actually believed. There's a moment where Millie looks up while we're praying, and it's one of my favorite moments in the movie, and it always strikes me as, I always wonder, is Millie's character believing in this faith thing or not? And so little things like that in that moment played for me in that dinner scene.
To me, it's like what Emily said before, how they're still trying to have like a good life. If you know, it's like she's made their beds and she's got them their toys, but she's altered them. Like when we're playing Monopoly, it's all silent. And I think because they're still trying to have a good life with the food, it's all silent. They're still trying to make. They don't want to just survive. They have to have a good, way of living.
Yeah. I also think that even which you do hear about a lot when people go through something very traumatic, even if you hadn't been previously faithful, and it may not be that you're praying to a god or anything like that, but in that moment it's a way for them to connect and be grateful for each other and grateful for this moment. And I think that's how I saw the scene too, is that they are turning to some kind of higher power to protect them because they're just living in torment, really.
I think speaking also to the film on a very overall scale, it's, at the end of the day, A Quiet Place could have just become a monster movie. But one thing that's really beautiful to see on the screen is this is a film about family and family communication and the breakdown of family communication, which I think is one of the most universal ideas that everybody confronts every single day. And being able to see a family living in silence, trying to convey how they're feeling inside, like that's a moving idea to us, and we really hope that that connects with audiences. And I think, everybody here has done a wonderful job just imbuing the final film with that touch.
I lied. I'm going to ask one more question. My favorite kind of monster movies are the ones that tell intimate stories that are tucked inside these much larger mythology. And so I guess for Bryan, Scott, for Brad, for Andrew, and maybe even John, we still don't know where these monsters came from. There could potentially be other stories to be told about this universe. And do you think about that? And would you be interested if the audience wants more?
I mean, it's such a fun world. It's such a fun world. There's so many things you could do.
There's so many discarded set pieces too, like just hiding on like Word documents on our computers. So yeah, there's certainly so many different stories you could tell. It's just really at the end of the day, who are the characters in this, and what does this situation mean to that dynamic? So.
Cool, awesome. All right. I think we're done. Yeah. Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.